Now that we have seen the hotel's typical organization structure, let us now look at the typical organization structure for a hotel financing. Within the all the organization structure that we saw under administration, there is a finance and accounting. So finance accounting is normally headed by a financial controller or a director of finance. Normally, in a hotel, five-star hotel, there is a finance manager, director of finance, finance manager. Depends on what the hotel chain is. Their designation can be different. Some of the hotels are calling it finance business partner, some call it finance controller, some call it director of finance, some call it finance manager. But the meaning and the responsibilities remain the same. They usually have a confidential secretary because in most of the five-star hotels or four-star hotels there are expatriates which needs to be handled, and all the benefits are usually handled by the FC themselves. And since the FCs they normally have many other tasks to do, they get a confidential secretary to handle those payroll and confidential information that the hotel has. For example, rooms rates, for example, the contracts, for example, the payroll of the expatriates or any other benefits that the hotel is having, the meetings with the owners. So those are the confidential matters that normally the FC's confidential secretary help the financial controller to maintain. Then they normally have payroll and general cashier. If let's say the payroll, which is handling the general payroll of the hotel, it can be combined with the general cashier position depending on the hotel size. It can be a separate position as well. So again, it depends on the size of the hotel. Then usually there is an assistant FC, or usually if the hotel is not too big, then there may not be an assistant FC, but everything may be handled by the chief accountant. So the assistant FC is responsible for the chief accountant, which is intern responsible for account payable and general ledger accounting. The assistant FC is also responsible for usually credit manager and the AR team. He is also responsible for income audit manager and the financial controller. But usual financial controller is responsible for, apart from assistant FC, is responsible for cost controller. Now, usually the cost controller, if it's a big hotel, it will be responsible. It will be reporting to the financial controller directly. But in smaller hotels, it can report to assistant FC or even to a chief accountant, because because of the nature of the hotel. So it's really depending on the size of the hotel. The large hotels which has a quite a huge F&B business, the F&B controller is usually a separate department, and usually it reports directly to the financial controller. Then cost control is also responsible for restore manager and the receiving department. So these two departments comes under the cost controller. The main purpose of separating the assistant FC or chief accountant from the cost controller is the internal control perspective, and also the volume of task for the cost controller if it's a bigger F&B department, a bigger F&B operation. Let's say the hotel has five or six or seven restaurants, maybe also a banquet. Like in my hotel where I used to work for Shangri-La Bangkok, which had seven restaurants plus a banquet operations of nearly 2,000 people, with high occupancies of both the functions and also the restaurants. The F&B controller was a completely different task because of the sheer volume of all the things that needs to be done. The cost controller was responsible for checking the quality of the item that we are buying, the processes, the spot checks, and everything else. If And I was the assistant FC at that point of time. Even though the cost controller was directly reporting to FC, since the hotel was big, my FC did not have much of the time to manage the cost controller. So I end up managing the cost control department as well. So it depends on the size. It again, the structure of the hotel and the FC, how much busy they are. They may separate the departments, or they may give the control of the department to their assistants as well. Now they're usually a purchasing department, purchasing director, which is separate from assistant FC, and the reason why is just only the internal control, because if assistant FC is the one who is managing the purchasing director as well, and they are managing the cash AP accounts payable and also the payments, it can be a risk of internal control where this one person can team up and everything can be um, used for frauds, right? You can issue fake purchase order, you can issue fake receipts, you can issue the fake payments or real payments based on fake document. So the separation of control is different, needed, and also depending on the size of the hotel and operations of the hotel, the purchasing director can have much more intense operations because of the high intensity of the negotiations, dealing with the suppliers, checking off the supplier inventory. Sorry. So usually there is a separate department, and then there is a internal control or corporate controller. So internal auditor or corporate controller's job is to check whether all the other departments in finance and also the non-finance, the F&B, room, sales, are carrying out their operations in accordance with the standard operating procedures of the hotel. The corporate controller uh, depending on the listing status of the hotel, whether it's a listed company or is a part of the group companies, their job mostly is to consolidate the financial statements. So the either assistant FC can also do it, but usually if there are multiple stakeholders involved, multiple is a listed company, then there is usually a bigger reporting requirement for the corporate controller to be there. Uh, I have not included the IT department here because IT department is you sometimes reporting directly to the GMs because of the now currently the all the things are done run on the information system. So it's wise for the hotel to have a separate control on the information systems rather than giving it to FC, because all our finance data is run on the account on the IT systems. If tomorrow the FC decides to do something hanky panky, because the IT is under their control, they can erase the data and the evidences. So it's always better to have IT under the executive office. But again, it depends on the hotel and the internal controls. Uh, uh, Financial controller can also be managing the IT department. So this is all about the structure of hotel accounting team.